Hey, beautiful people. Happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of the Nurse Doc Show. It's been a great week for those who watch the Night Shift Report. You will be intimately familiar with kind of like how this week has been going and all the other foolishness that we're going to talk about tonight. The main one being the birth of a baby. And not just any baby, but a baby that's going to make a big difference. So check out the promo and you're going to be amazed by what we have to talk about. All right? So coming back right after this. All right. All right, so we had an amazing week. A lot of foolishness was going on. That's why I said, "Hey, did the world turn on its axis?" And I didn't even know. I like this. I like this camera viewpoint better than the other camera. It makes it feel more intimate. So, welcome to another episode of the Nurse Doc Show. We talked about a lot this week. We know we went through the longest government shutdown in American history. Lives were changed. People experienced situations that they never thought that they would be in, especially if you're a hardworking American. You go to work and you hope to bring home a paycheck, and over 800,000 of our federal government employees missed not one but two paychecks during the course of this time over this back and forth about a wall. And while I get it, yes, we want border security, blah, 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 a lot of lives hung in the balance. Even more so was the physician who was fired from Mount Carmel and the nurses that were fired along with them, that we may get an opportunity to talk about after the first episode, first part of the show. But the other part is this woman who gave birth in a what we say was a vegetative state. That was the original report, right? And then it turned into she was a quadriplegic. Oh no, she had seizures at a very young age. Either way, the woman was in a state to which she was not able to consent to having sex with the individual who raped her. And while they say, oh, it's assault, it's rape. And rape is a hard word to hear. It makes you have a very visceral response versus he assaulted her. But the truth at the end of the day is that he raped her. So I have on tonight three individuals: Reverend Dr. Deidre Walton, who is a specialist in the field of nursing, has years in an administrative and leadership. She brings a wealth of information, so I'm excited to have her on. My friend Kent Alford, who is another male nurse brother, who brings information from working in behavioral health, working in leadership, and administration, because there was a lot of things that happened in this situation. And also, if somebody you'll know, I mean, he's become a regular face on the show. That's Blake Smith. Blake Smith is the president of the American Association of Men in Nursing. So I'm bringing them in, and I'm working with new cameras, so excuse me. Hey, guys. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
So we have
Hi.
Deidre. Can
Hello.
everybody say hey so I can make sure you guys are heard?
Hey,
Hi.
So you all, we've had a brief intro of the foolishness, of the madness. Everybody has heard about it, and we'll get into the details. But I want to play for everyone the 911 call and get you guys feedback about the 911 call, because I'm not sure if everybody heard it. All right?
Yes. Phoenix 911.
Oh, the baby's turning blue. Baby's turning blue.
Okay, where are you at?
We need an RT.
What is the address, ma'am?
Baby's turning blue! Baby's turning blue!
Ma'am, I need an
Hello?
address. I need an address.
I'm sorry.
Okay, and is it a house or an apartment?
No, it's a facility for...
Okay, I'm going to get paramedics are on the line. You need to give them the address again.
You said 30?
30? What is it?
No, what's the unit number?
What's the unit number for... No, for... What is it? What is it? For... What's the room for...
Okay, what's the emergency?
Someone just had a baby. One of our patients just had a baby, and we had no idea she was pregnant.
Okay, is the baby
We were not
out?
prepared for that. Baby's turning blue. We need someone now.
Okay, all right, go in there with the baby, and I want you to walk this through, okay?
All right.
I'm going to be on the line with you. What's your phone number?
Shoot, I don't know what the phone number is for this. Give me 1 second, I'll find it for you. We have a respiratory over there with them, too. The phone number is...
Okay, and the mom is doing okay?
We're not sure. We had no idea this patient was pregnant.
Okay, and the
This
respiratory
is a patient.
is doing...
We have respiratory here, and
okay,
we have
are they doing
nurses here.
compressions? Or
God,
what's
I'm
going on
sorry.
right now?
Were we able to get the baby out? Is the baby breathing? Is the baby breathing? Baby's not breathing. Baby is blue.
Okay, so are they doing CPR?
Are they doing... Yeah, they're doing CPR on the baby.
Okay, good. Just keep going with that. And how's the mom doing?
Mom's doing well. It looks like she's doing well.
How far
Did we
along
get
is
a set
she?
of vitals? We had no idea this person was pregnant. We had no idea this patient was pregnant.
Okay, I understand. Does she know how far along she was or anything?
We have no idea. This is a complete surprise. We were not expecting this.
Okay, and the baby
Is the baby doing
responsive
better?
or no?
Is the baby responsive? No, baby's not responsive.
Okay, and they're still doing compressions, right?
They're still trying to do compressions and they're suctioning the baby.
Okay, good, good. You guys are doing a great job. We got help on the way. Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you. Do I just hang up with you and then just go back to the
just
baby?
stay on the line.
Stay on the line?
I want to see how they're doing. Okay, and I need you to give me the address.
Should we get vitals on mom? Here, let's get the vital machine. I want vitals on mom. She had a baby. Look, there's a baby right there.
Okay. They're still doing compressions on the baby, right?
Yeah, and mom's doing fine.
Okay.
Mom is doing fine. We're about to take some vitals on her, but so far she looks stable.
What is your name, ma'am?
My name is and I'm the nurse.
How old is
We
the woman?
take care of... How old is... Give me 1 second. She'll be something. I can go take a look at her chart and give you the exact... thank you. Someone's going to go give me the chart. Wow. Oh, my goodness. How are we doing with the baby?
Is there any signs of life from the baby?
Any signs of life in the baby yet? Let me see.
Just makes and they're doing the compressions with 2 fingers in the center of the chest.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 1 finger below the nipple line,
Let's see.
and then they want to push down 1.5 inches. Okay.
Are you guys still doing compressions on baby? Yeah, they got the baby on an ambu bag. Are you guys still doing? Yeah, I'm on the phone with them right now. Are you still doing compressions on the baby?
Okay.
They're not doing compressions. They have an ambu bag on the baby.
They have what on the baby?
An ambu bag?
Is it an AED or what? What are you saying is on the baby right now?
They have an ambu bag on the baby.
Okay, so are they trying to resuscitate the baby?
Are you guys still doing? Because they want you guys to still do compressions. No, it's breathing. The baby's breathing. Oh, the baby's breathing. Oh my God! Thank God.
Okay. Okay, and that's the baby in the background?
We're getting vitals on mom. I'm sorry, say that again?
That's the baby in the background?
Yeah, there's a baby in the back.
Okay, So, ladies and gentlemen, there were a lot of things that happened in that conversation with our nursing colleague. And I brought you all on because what was most interesting is, did she handle that situation appropriately? There were a lot of challenges. I gone over in my head and with other nursing colleagues who work in the hospital, because I don't know about actually the nursing home setting, and I know that you all do understand the culture. I'd like to start with you, Deidre. What were your thoughts with this 911 call and with this, the way that it was handled by a nursing facility that's not actually typically probably prepared to care for giving birth to a baby?
Well, several thoughts crossed my mind as I listened to the 911 call, as well as my familiarity with long-term care facilities. I was a little concerned about the hesitancy and the skill set of the nurse that called the 911 call, having, and perhaps it was her anxiety. I don't know, but I was really concerned about the delay and the lack of the coordination and knowledge level. But what else concerned me was, here you have, she kept saying, we didn't know she was pregnant. We didn't know she was pregnant. And that brought to mind to me accountability, also the skills, because you're supposed to be taking care of those patients, even if they're in a long-term care facility, in spite of their level of consciousness. Even if she was in a vegetative state, the responsibility and accountability of that nursing staff to take care of that patient and not be aware that she was pregnant to the time of delivery. That really concerns me. And the responsibility and accountability of the facility with the state and the physician is just, to me, I'm really concerned because of the outcome of lack of care and responsibility to a patient in a nursing facility.
Right, right. Uh, and I agree, Deidre. Like you said, in any situation, we should, as nurses, be prepared for an emergency. And we don't know her the mindset. I know me personally, I would be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and trying to gather things. But I think there was a lot of miscommunication. Like, was there an ambu bag? I don't even know if the EMS person sounded like he knew what an ambu bag was, or were they prepared with vitals? Were vitals done on mom? And then also, as part of the conversation, during the course of this emergency, she has a conversation with a colleague and says, "Oh my God, she's having a baby," and her colleague says, "Who's having a baby?" I don't know that would have been the best time to to say, "Oh my God, aren't you just as shocked as I am?" So, Ken, I'd like to hear from you your thoughts about the 911 call.
Okay. I'm gonna start with the 50,000-foot view,
Thank you.
Leslie. Okay, so the process should have been, the nursing administrator or coordinator should have been on the call directing the management of this patient. This is an obstetrical emergency. You definitely don't want lay people at the helm, and you want someone that can guide the conversation to a good outcome. Basically, a person is having a baby. Here's what we have, what the presentation is. Here's what we have, and here's what we don't have. Mm-hmm. That's just a standard, and any of my nurse administrator colleagues across the system will be able to explain that should have happened. At the very granular level, it seemed to be fumbling with knowledge of understanding what's happening, of people responding, of too many people in the call. What were they asking? It was just pure chaos. And if that is their process, then everything now will unfold into how this happened. As Deidre mentioned, the level of accountability, state and regulatory omissions or confessions. So it was just a mess from the beginning to the end, just from the management of leadership to the people who are actually delivering care.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. In you saying that actually, so a supervisor should have been directing the call, the conversation, or the nurse was should have been made the call, because that's interesting.
Yeah, it should have been one. If it wasn't the supervisor, then the most competent nurse, being the charge nurse, should have been directing with at least a clinical presentation.
Hmm.
And here's what we have. Here's what we don't have. Here's what we need. We have people basically. This is like fumbling. They don't even know what it is, and then responding and trying to tell 911 to give us help when 911 really can't give you help because they don't know what you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now you, Blake. So Blake, what Blake as a leader, what were your thoughts as a bedside nurse? Because you're a relatively new leader, so you kind of get the kind of like visceral probably experience that she was having. What are your thoughts about the 911 call?
Well, what was going through my head was, I was a charge nurse with ICU, where I worked, and in the step down unit, and on those shifts, you'd regularly get called to rapid response teams. And what was
Hmm.
going through my mind is coming into a patient's room, even in the inpatient setting, and if I were to encounter a nurse like this, without being able to visually see what I'm seeing, and the information was being provided in this chaotic form that, as Kent was alluding to, it would be very difficult to help. And this, I think that's kind of where the 911 crew was coming from as well. One, this may be snippets of the 911 call. I don't know if it's in its entirety, but not one
I
time
think
during
it's in
that
its
whole time
entirety.
I heard
That's
an
the scary
address.
part. Oh
Yeah,
well,
I never heard an address.
I think to be honest, I think that there were things bleeped out for HIPAA
Oh,
and so forth and
gotcha.
so on. So I think that
Good.
that was the case.
Yeah, because that was the most concerning thing is why are we going into this other stuff when we don't have crews on the on the way? It's like not calling overhead
Right.
for a code and you're trying to solve a code. But at the same time, everybody through nursing school, and for those who may not be aware that we always communicate in SBAR format, and that means
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
situation, background, our assessment, and what we're recommending. And it's very difficult to accept information in a very efficient manner if it's not presented that way. And and though it's a 911 call, but at the same time, for us listening to this, that was the hardest thing for me from the bedside perspective. If I need to lead a situation,
Mm-hmm.
um, one, you can't hear what's going on with the other individuals. They may have been presenting information, but what was coming through to 911 was so chaotic in the means that you couldn't even understand what was in the situation other than there was a baby,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there may or may not have vitals or assessment on the mother. They may or may not have done a complete excuse me, a complete assessment on the baby, but they just knew they were blue. You know, that's what concerned me when, as a nurse, if you're a nurse on the phone, these are the things that you need to be helping um, execute. And also, if you're that primary nurse, you shouldn't be the one on the call. Like Ken said, you need to have some sort of supervisor who understands that, so you can be in next to the baby and the mother handling the situation, and so you can facilitate the actual care to the patient. And because you know the most about that patient that day, and
Mm-hmm.
instead of being on the phone and having your coworkers taking facilitating that care. So, there's a lot of things missing. I think from our perspective, we're only hearing the 911 call with the reports. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to give the benefit of the doubt, at the very end of the day, for the nurse and who are all was involved. But what you hear from the surface is concerning, and
Right.
could be handled much, much better.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that a lot of it also speaks to, like Deidre said earlier, the skill set. I think that for individuals who aren't nurses or doctors and in the medical field, I think that skilled care facilities all too often get the brand new staff. They have challenges from a budget issue. I'm not making any excuses. They have challenges from a skill technical issue, which we'll talk about in a few seconds. But Deidre, do you think that played a part, like in this nurse's skill set? Because nursing homes a lot of time aren't prepared to deal with emergencies. They are underfunded. They don't do the best in educating staff about kind of like as far as it relates to the technical parts of being a nurse. What are your thoughts about it?
My thoughts about that is there's no justification for lack of skills in CPR. That is a requirement for these job positions, regardless if they're a registered nurse, a certified nursing assistant, and licensed practical vocational nurse. That is a requirement for that job to be in that nursing facility, to be certified in CPR. And the CPR classes, they need to make sure that they're kept up to date on their certifications. And so I don't find that as an excuse.
Gotcha.
That's a requirement.
And I thank you for bringing me back because a lot of times I kind of get, well, let's look at let's look at, on both edges of the thing, but there is no excuse. That's not a facility requirement. That's a healthcare requirement. All healthcare practitioners, I know some facilities that require social workers to be trained and BLS trained. So yeah, you're very, very, very right about that. Now, so over the course of the week, this thing just grew and it grew and more came out. Because first, like I said, like you heard the lady's like, well, she's in a vegetative state. She doesn't really talk. We're completely surprised about that. Then it turned into, well, she may be paralyzed. Doctors were fired. A doctor came up, his assessment and written information was found, and he noted that the patient had a firm belly. Because let's be honest, over the course of 9 months, this lady had to show to somebody. I don't care who you are. You can be Joe Schmo off the street that can tell if you see a woman in her third month of gestation versus her ninth month and say, there's something different about the situation. Uh, so any thoughts about that? Because like Blake pointed, well, she's like, we didn't know this woman was pregnant. We didn't know this woman was pregnant, and she constantly kept saying it. And the guy sounds like he's like,
Right.
I get it.
Yeah, he's like, move
Yeah,
on.
she constantly
Yeah,
she
yeah,
constantly said that she didn't know she was pregnant, and the other one didn't know she was pregnant. And again, I go
yeah.
back to that accountability issue with the facility. How can you have a client and see in these facilities, the sexual abuse is not new. And as advocates for our patients, regardless of what facility they're in, if they're at home, if they're in ambulatory care, we have accountability to make sure that they are protected. And so this is, to me, I'm very concerned that she was in a facility, if she was in a vegetative state or not, that the facility administration did not provide her that safety net. Sexual abuse is not uncommon, and we as advocates have to speak out to make sure there's rules in place and consequences for failure to follow those rules.
Right. And thank you for bringing that up, Deidre, because again, I think that, like we said earlier, the reason why this blew up actually is because there is the I guess what would you call it? The burning evidence that sexual abuse happens. So when an elderly patient is molested or raped or different stuff of that nature, there are things that you can hide. But when a brand new baby being born, which needless to say, now I think I'll bring up this clip. Let me bring up the clip because then we'll talk about how the organization chose to handle the situation, because I think that's also very telling. So we'll go to the tape. All right. So, like you saw in the video, she gave birth on December 29th. This broke news maybe 2 weeks ago. Uh, the family was made aware of the childbirth 2 days after this particular incident took place. There's a huge gap between December 29th, this breaking, versus a week, 2 weeks ago. The Unfortunately, during the course of that time, the CEO stepped down because, hey, this is all hell is breaking loose. Let's just be honest, all hell is breaking loose. Let me go. Two doctors left, and this nurse is now being charged. Actually, he was just charged this week. Nathan Sutherland was just charged this week, and I understand that it takes a while to get DNA samples back. So they sampled the baby and found that there's a match that the Nathan Sutherland has 23 chromosomes in this baby, right? There's a lot that happened. What are Blake? You first. What are your thoughts about this? Nathan Sutherland is a male nurse. He's a licensed practical nurse practicing in the state of Arizona. I don't know laws in the state of Arizona. I was supposed to have a legal nurse consultant. Unfortunately, she was unable to join, and also Kathy Abreu, who's a staunch patient advocate, were supposed to join. But I don't know about what happens in Arizona, but I know that this doesn't sound like this should have happened. What are your thoughts, Blake?
Well, the first thing when I found out about this was my heart just sank, and because of such a tragic event for an individual, a vulnerable individual to go through, to be in a state as she was, and to have someone who she should be trusting in her care to do something like this. I can't even imagine in my mind. And now not only the patient, but the family, and now a very young individual just came into this world, into this situation, due to the acts and decisions of one individual to do this. And when you see the headline and it says male nurse, of course, this is a male in this incident who did this act. And is it unacceptable, not only in our profession, but in our society? But as a male nurse myself, especially in the world we live in today, there's been certain individuals who have taken similar decision making and have made it more mainstream. And true men who actually carry themselves the way they should, to the standards they do, as well as we as men in this profession who hold ourselves to very high standards to take care of patients like our female colleagues. It takes a potential hit to us, and to me, it just hurts my heart. I can't. There's no other way around that of how I feel. But this goes to how we need to continue to recruit to our profession those based on characteristics, values, and principles, no matter who they are. And we also need to continue to advocate and protect our patients, not just from family members or themselves by guiding their care, but also be watching out for our colleagues. What do they do? And I'm not saying we have to be on the defensive all the time, but is there things going on? Is there trends that are out of the norm? And for this to be going on for the time it has, how long it seems to have had gone on, to me, there's had to have been some subtle signs going on of this. And again, you can only take from the media reports. You can only take from, and it's still an ongoing instigation, trials coming. So I'm not going to sit here, and I don't want to judge anything, but it sounds like there's pretty
compelling
strong
amount
evidence
of evidence
in the point of being convicted. And so we as a profession need to stand up. We need to get out into the public more, I think, so people know who we are, what we advocate for, and advocate even more than we are. I think sometimes we advocate in the shadows. We do great change as nurses, But sometimes it takes a lot of confidence to put your neck out to the public and stand for something as an advocate and to help direct change on the legislative side. And I think we need to continue to do that and continue to put more policies and more efficient policies in play, as well as guidelines. And we as male nurses need to do that even more, because I think we represent the men in our society that young boys should be looking up to, because of the high standards that we hold, just because of the profession that we do, not just in our own lives, but the principles and values in our own lives led us to this career.
Right.
And I think a lot of young boys need those types of role models in their lives. And when an individual does something like this, we need to stand up and push back on it,
Right.
to that individual who decided to do something like this.
Right. Now, Reverend Dr. Walton, I would love to hear your input as a staunch patient advocate, because we know this patient's rights are clearly violated. This patient's person, even if she's in a vegetative state, so the video states that she had been in the care of this facility since the age of 3. So she was incapacitated. What are your thoughts about how this has been handled? What can we as nurses do? What can families do? Because, at the end of the day, the product of this is now a baby. The product of this is a family who entrusted the care of their loved one to this facility, and this has been the outcome. What are your thoughts? What can we do? What should people be doing as a patient, as a person, as a professional who understands patient advocacy and that patient rights can be violated and are touchy?
Well, that's an excellent question, Dr. Willis. Violence against women and global, human rights violation as it relates to sexual abuse it should be at the forefront. And as advocates, we need to make society, as Blake talked about, policies and procedures, we need to make them accountable to that they are created. Not only are they created, but that they are monitored, and that they consequences do follow. Too often we make policies and then we say, okay, we took care of it. But as in this situation, I'm sure they had policies in terms of performance issues and things like that within that facility. But it's unlikely that this young man, and I will say this to all the 3 of you young men, we have some excellent male nurses in this country, and we don't want those few to destroy your image. So let me give you kudos for that before I move on. But we as a nursing profession need to make sure that this whole issue of violence against women is addressed, regardless of where that or that female resides, a nursing home, in the home, whatever. But it just breaks my heart that it had to be in a facility where she was totally relying on the facility, making sure that she was protected and that her rights were not violated. And I think that this is a call to nurses, both male and female, RN to CNA, that we need to do a valiant cry that we need to protect our patients regardless of where they are and regardless of age. I can't speak more about that. It's just it breaks my heart that this had to happen, and against the profession that is supposed to be the number one trusted profession for the last how many years?
17.
17.
Yes.
Yeah,
public policy is the arena.
And I think at the forefront of this, and sometimes we forget, especially at the height of everything that's going on, there's an underlying current and acceptance, or not really acceptance, or kind of fear that there's the conversation about violence against women, right? And this is, at the end of the day, this is violence against a female patient. So the charges that Nathan Sutherland were brought up on weren't of rape, which carry a heavier charge. It was actually, he's being charged with assault. And I think that speaks to how culturally how we have over the world just how, kind of like women's rights have been a bit diminished, and like the kind of like like when this news came out, it was assault of a female patient. When the truth was, this is a rape. It's just out and out rape. And I'm interested.
I hope, yeah.
Mhm.
I hope at the end of the day that the prosecutor, after they get all of the information and all of all of that takes involving this case, don't just, do it haphazardly,
Mhm.
that they do come with rape, because she was vegetative. She did not give consent, could not give
Right.
consent. And how often did this happen? Often enough. It just takes one time to get pregnant. But how often? Because I'm
Exactly.
sure even after she got pregnant, he continued.
Right.
But that's just deep.
Right. And Ken, I would love to hear from you because as a leader in a behavioral health organization, I know that a lot of times individuals with mental health is very protected one, but individuals with mental health are even more at risk, I feel like, of violations and different stuff like that. What do you think that we as nurses, we as leaders, or we as people can do for family patients who are experiencing mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar to protect them also?
Well, first of all, I think as Deidre said, we have to take a pause right now because this was a horrific incident. It for me and being a male nurse as well, I just it sets us back so many years because of all the details that we hear. As an organization, Wesley, to answer your question, I think we need to have processes in place
Hmm.
that we look at our culture and take a serious look at it. Do we have a culture where when we see something going on, do our employees report it? Do our employees have a ability to report it without any repercussions?
Hmm.
And if we can have that kind of conversation first, I think that will allow us at least to know what the problems are. And then when we discover that we have people who are fearful of having those kind of conversations, then we need to talk about what do we do to make it easier for them? Do we have incident reporting where it's anonymous? Do we have hotlines that our employees can get on to say, hey, this didn't look right? And then
Hmm.
how are our treatment teams, our nurses, our doctors, our social workers, are they connecting to each other? Are they
Hmm.
talking
Hmm.
to each other? Did they know when this woman had a firm belly? Did the nurse know? Did the social worker know? Did whoever else clinician know? So there was an intervention because I think that was a disconnect in the communication with the treatment team. So
Right.
culture, treatment team, communication, all those things have to be revamped, constantly scrubbed and looked at and assessed, and then we can make calls about what to do next.
Right. Thank you, Alan, about the conversation as an ER nurse and how the discombobulated the call sounded because it did sound quite. One second, it did sound quite. Uh, a lot was going on in it. So Alan says, I'm perplexed. Guys, Alan said, I'm perplexed with this story. As an ER nurse, I can say it was chaos, but considering the fact that she was in a vegetative state in a nursing home, it makes sense that they would not be prepared for such an emergency. A nursing home without a critical or L&D experience would act confused and traumatized with this experience. Uh, and then Alan goes on to say, hashtag male nurse power. And people are saying how in disbelief that they are from like the story. I mean, yeah. So Abbas, thank you for saying that it's unbelievable. I know you work at L&D, and you're familiar with like kind of like the joys and pleasures of having a child, but unfortunately, this was on such a crazy circumstance. I cannot tell you guys how I have been over the course of these last 2 weeks just sitting with bated breath trying to figure out what is going to come out next. So, so thank you for taking the time. Would you guys like to add something at the end? Because I try to keep these at 35 to 45 minutes. Because, I mean, I feel like there's still so much more that we could talk about. There's so many layers to this situation. And I would love to
Hey,
hear your final kind of thoughts about it. So before we sign off.
so Dr. Wesley, if I could take that first charge with this group, I want to say I work with dozens of nurses, male nurses,
Hmm.
that I would trust my life with. And I want to say that, as you said and as Blake mentioned, that we will continue to advocate for our patients. We will continue to show the public that we can do this, and we will protect them, and that this incident, although horrific, will not take away the glory and the care that we give as male nurses.
Hmm.
And I want to say that to the public at large.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, King. Deidre or Blake?
Yes,
I'll
Ken,
go.
I echo your sentiments, and the thing that I would just want to remind all of us nurses is, like Ken said, take a pause. Like Dr. Diedrich said, take a pause, but take a pause for yourself as well. And the pause should be knowing your resources. If you understanding that if you're not in situations over and over again, yes, you are subject to maybe losing some experience and skill set from that. That's why we have continued education. But if you haven't been in that reality, you can kind of be off your game a little bit. But there's no excuse in regards to not knowing your resources and calling a 911 and what those steps would be and who's doing what. Now, those situations will always be unique in themselves, but have a plan so you know how to approach it, so you can act accordingly to get the best outcome possible. And as a male nurse, I'm a nurse first, and I know that we all say we're nurses first, and I I'm so proud of my profession. I'm so proud of those who work in it. No matter where you come from, there's a unique characteristic of all of us. We always want to do something that's bigger than ourselves, and we're in the profession because of it. We care for others, sometimes before ourselves, which we need to do. We need to take care of ourselves as well. But we all inherit that same passion to take care of others, and it's based off again a characteristic, not your gender, not your race, not your ethnicity, not sexual orientation. It doesn't matter, and that's why we need to continue to recruit all over our populations to bring in the best and the brightest and most compassionate individuals that live in this country, because that's how our progression continues to progress and stay the most trusted profession and the greatest profession. And obviously I have a bias, but
We all do.
that's how we keep that and so that's why I just want to say is that I'm here obviously representing the male nurses in our country, but also I'm here representing nurses in general. And the act that happened in this situation is unacceptable for our profession. It's unacceptable for our society. And we, as nurses, male and female, need to continue to combat and push back on this almost, it's not enhancement, but this surge of assault and demeaning behavior, mostly and most commonly by men.
Right.
And we need to be at the forefront of that.
Right. Thank you so much, Blake. And I couldn't have actually planned this out better. Dr. Walton, I would love to love your final thoughts about this issue.
Well, my final thoughts are I want to continue to support my male nurse colleagues, continue to recruit male nurses into the profession. As said, you're nurses. You happen to be male, but you're nurses and are phenomenal nurses. And as far as just in general, we are here as nurses to protect and be the voice for the vulnerable populations that we serve. And I want to continue to support organizations as well as our profession to really get out there. Martin Luther King says, when we become silent about things that matter, that's when our life begins to end. That's a paraphrase, but that's what he said. And so we have got to be the voice for our vulnerable populations. And that would be my ending statement. Let it not end here.
Right.
Let us be
Right.
that.
Well, I thank you all for taking the time for what I like I said to each of you. This is a nursing town hall, and I would love for when situations such as this come up that we convene a bit of this. One of the things that stood out the most to me over the course of these last 2 weeks, not once did they bring a nurse on these shows and have a conversation. I saw a doctor who gave expert uh, interview. I saw an administrator, but at no time was a nurse, somebody who could be representative, trained, and experienced in our profession to like just have a conversation about it. So I said, you know what, Wesley, there's a nursing town hall meeting necessary for the public, to people who watch this show, and hopefully others who will watch this show. And we can talk about it because it's definitely something that has to be talked about. We are almost 4 million strong. There are almost 4 million registered nurses in the United States. And we're growing, and we need even more. And we want more people to join our very ethical and very dignified profession. And so when this becomes the face of news, people are like, well, why would I become a nurse? You know, or what's the whole, where's the win-win in this? This is a one-up, I guess, basically. And even though there are other incidences, there are so many cases and experience where nurses are doing huge and phenomenal things and making impacts in so many people's lives. And I feel like sometimes it gets diminished by these things that happen like this. So that's why I wanted to call a nursing town hall meeting. I hope I can have you all on my next nursing town hall meeting. And I thank you for taking the time out on a Sunday night.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Wes.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
invite. Thank you.
Talk to you later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all again for tuning in to the Nurse Doc Show. There was so much more that I actually could have talked about because I think that there is just a lot going on. Oh, let me get this right. Right? Come on, come up. I think there's a lot going on, way too much going on. And I want to thank you for joining me on a Sunday night. Thank you to Reverend Dr. Deidre Walton. Thank you to my friend, my buddy, my brother, Blake Smith, and also Ken Alford for offering all of this great information. Take it, use it. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you on Monday for the Night Shift Report.
We dance.